Hello and welcome to the Mindset Bloomcast with Mallory McGary. I am Mallory McGary, your host. I am also the founder and CEO of Beautifully Blooming, and you are listening to the WGSN-DB Going Solo Network radio, TV, and podcasts, the number one internet talk radio network. So I'm excited to be here today. I have got a fun topic that has kind of come up through the last couple of weeks that has really gotten me thinking about what um, what we feel like in on our day-to-day lives. So, first of all, I want you to raise your hand, whether you're in your office or in your car or at your house, wherever you are. Um, Raise your hand if you have felt like you have been failing in some aspect of your life this week. Maybe it was um, being a parent, maybe it was a career thing, maybe it was with your friends and family, maybe it was something underneath all of that. But I am curious to know. So um, please reach out and respond. You can find me on my website at beautifullyblooming.com, or you can email me at Mallory at beautifullyblooming.com, or you can find me on Instagram at Mallory McGary. But I'm curious to know what areas you felt like you have been failing in, just because it probably started me thinking about it more this week because it was Valentine's. So however you celebrated with somebody, not with family and friends, just however you celebrated, awesome. I hope just a lot of love was included in that. But let's kind of dive in a little bit about expectations. Um, this is one of my favorite topics, weirdly, and one of my favorite things to kind of help people break through, because we have a bar, standards, um, and expectations that we hold on ourselves that other people may hold for us, whatever that looks like. That is, some are really easily attainable because that's something that we are good at, or naturally it's something that just comes easy to us, where other things are not so much. And we've set that bar so high that expectation of we have to be able to do it, that when we don't make it, automatically um, our minds say, sorry, you failed. Like, you're never going to be great at anything anymore because you can't do this thing. So you're going to fail at everything else that pertains to this. If you can't reach this, then you're going to go back. Everything is just kind of a domino effect. So my favorite thing to do also, um, from our last show, is to find the actual definition to get context of what the word actually means, because the word expectation to me means um, that it is just a standard, a bar that I have to meet no matter what. But the word expectation could mean something completely different to you, and um, that's okay. Everybody has their own different definitions of words that like this. So I like to dig into the dictionary and give the actual words. So bear with me as I look at my notes. But expectations flows also from the word expect. So it's to look forward to or regard as likely to happen. So you're anticipating the occurrence of the coming of something. So expectations funneled on top of that is also the act or state of looking forward to something. So when you're expecting something, um, let's just say a baby, or a, when you're expecting that, you're looking forward to that due date. You're looking forward to seeing the tiny human, and you have that expectation that they're at least going to come by X date, maybe a little bit earlier, maybe a little bit later, but you have that rough expectation in mind and you can look forward to that. So that's a physical something. But most expectations that we have are mental somethings. Um, so I'm gonna kind of rewind my life back a little bit for you, give you a little bit of a story that when I was in high school, I through my high school career, I guess you could say, I graduated with really a high GPA, which was a 3.98, and I was planning on being a 4.0 student. So this is the story of how I was not the 4.0 student. Um, I I never was told by my parents that it was A's or nothing. Um, they just encouraged to get good grades, like grades that would help me get into college, because education was something that was important to them. So they just encouraged good grades. There wasn't that standard of it has to be A's or that's it. Um, but my own mind took that and said, I have to be a straight A student. Um, A minuses were a little bit of a wiggle room, but I had to be a straight A student. That's what my parents expected of me, or at least my mind told me that that's what they expected of me. And I had to achieve that bar. So, come about my um, second term in high school in my AP language class, I got my very first and only B plus. And I thought that the world was gonna end. Like, I shed more tears over a B plus grade than looking at it and saying, I still met that expectation. I felt like I had completely failed in my high school career and my life because I got a B plus. That was the end of like my college dreams. I couldn't go for it anymore. Anything like that just it just tanked. And that wasn't an expectation set anywhere else but my own mind. So examples of that, um, that's a really kind of a basic example, but going forward in my life, it just kind of things like that just kind of kept coming up of the expectation wasn't that I out here in the world or from family and friends and my job and career was to just excel and be 1% better each time at something. But my own mind and my own fear was saying it has to be perfect or I have failed. There's no wiggle room in that. If it wasn't perfect for me and what I deemed was perfect, then it wasn't perfect. It wasn't good enough for anything else, and so I have failed. So in a weird way, I self-punished myself a lot, um, thinking I'm never gonna make it. I failed there. I'm gonna for my job that I'm gonna get fired because I didn't do anything better than what I thought. Um, but it all came down to that simple thing of it was all I was creating these standards and these expectations that weren't really there. That I was meeting what I needed to, and I was even exceeding what I needed to, but my own expectation was saying, "Oh my gosh, you didn't do it from A to Z. Everything was not perfectly lined out. You have failed." And that's not true. Um, so continuing on still, through my mindset work and everything like that, I can look at my life now and give myself some wiggle room. I do still have expectations. I do still have things that I want to achieve in my life, um, and things that I want my life to look like. So, for example, um, motherhood. It's I want to have um, I want to be that mom that has, sits down with my toddler and we do like a little preschool thing where we're learning something. We have a good amount of reading time. We have um, interactive play and we also have independent play. And we do all these things together that just stimulate his brain and help him grow and become just that solid person, learning different things, how to respond to things, and just that growing. He's in that growing phase. He's 2.5, and so getting all of those things of instilling all of those values and things in him right now is, I just feel like, is you just have to have this plan. Let me shift to reality for a minute. It doesn't happen. My reality is, if we get a really good solid 15 minutes of reading time without involving a running around his room or anything like that, that's a major win in my space. Um, if we can sit down and he can help me with, like, making a snack or something like that, that's a big win. If he can play by himself for a little bit, that's a big win. Um, I know also that being a working parent, and wherever you're at, whether you're in an office or at home, I do know home's a little bit more difficult sometimes, especially if you do have your littles running around. Um, that when you need to get on a meeting, and some days are full of meetings and other days are not, but if you need a meeting, you throw on a TV show or a movie or something that will just keep them kind of contained for a minute and not asking you to come play with them, or that they need a snack, or whatever's happening in their space. Um, so it feels like you've become, um, this terrible parent, that you've become this person that is has let screen time come in on more on certain days than other days. And there's no judgment whatsoever. My toddler watches screen time while I'm on meetings. He It's just kind of sometimes the best way that we can function. Um, but we do what we can. But that expectation somewhere out in the world has come and said, if your kid has certain amount of screen time, I've seen different time limits, um, they're not developing right, or um, that they're just kind of not going to function well, is kind of how I feel it's positioned, and not meant to be positioned, but it's positioned that way. So when maybe they have an extra 20 minutes or whatever, your go over whatever your time limit is, or whatever you have in set up in your system, is that you feel like you failed, because that expectation, because someone once said somewhere that you shouldn't give your kids screen time, but sometimes that's the way your reality is, that you failed as a parent, as a person. And you have not failed. You are working with what you've got. You've got to use your resources. Sometimes I look at, Mickey Mouse, it's current favorite at my house, Mickey Mouse as an additional teacher. Maybe it's slightly preschool, maybe it's just a little bit of entertainment, but he's still learning something. My toddler is still learning something. Um, he's learned things from there that I had no idea even, like, had passed through his brain. He just says things. So I count it as that type of a learning experience for him. It's an immersive experience for him. So my expectation of that is we learn something. Um, and for whatever that is um, expecting the we're looking forward to something, yes, but I think that expectation has kind of warped from looking forward to something into kind of, I'm putting this in air quotes, but a bad word, because it has such a negative connotation to it. If you hear expectations and it is like, oh man, you, my heart sometimes kind of starts to palpitate. I get a little bit, my hands get a little bit sweaty, and like I'm pretty much, that word feel to me feels like it's setting me up to fail. So I don't look at things like that in that way. I look at them as achievements, or um, stepping stones is the best way I look at it. Is that one step to one part of that bar is a stepping stone, and I'm just stepping and making myself better on each part of this journey and each part of the task or goal, whatever it is that you're looking at, that I'm just getting better, that there's no real expectation. Because right now, um, especially the last 2 years, I know everybody says this too, it's been kind of a dumpster fire. And right now, we're still just kind of trying to climb out of that. And so, expectations are just getting better. My expectation is to just get better. There's no real set bar of what things look like because I don't know what they're going to look like. My everybody's world's kind of been turned into a tailspin, so you don't know what it looks like. So just getting better is just and making that stepping stone is the best way to look at expectations. And for expectations, there's one side is holding yourself to something, which we just went over, is you've just set these standards and these bars, these high bars in your mind that you are pushing yourself to reach and expecting yourself to reach, whether you can or you can't. And if you don't, then automatically you're failing. But on the flip side of that coin is the expectations you hold on others. Um, Now we're going to kind of think about this a little bit in the way of whether it's a partner or a spouse or family and friends, just the people around you, that you have different expectations for different people in your life. So maybe for a partner, a spouse, a significant other, you have an expectation that they just automatically know what you need when you need it. So if you need to say something or get something off your chest, they can just get look at you and say, Something's going on. I'm going to stop. We're going to have this conversation, and everything's going to be right in the world." Um, if it's friends and family, it's maybe you expect them to want to hang out with you and you. Maybe it's as you as a couple, maybe it's siblings just creating that bond within yourselves of having that stronger bond, um, that they want to hang out with you, that they want to be with you. And maybe it doesn't happen. Life has led you down different paths and you can't connect. You're both busy, whatever that looks like. Maybe it's your friends. You have the expectation that they're just going to reach out to you and just know automatically when you just need that little bit of extra love and oomph in your day, in your life, whatever that is. But the real question that comes along with having expectations on others is, have you told them about it? Um, I can say that through my journey and my mindset work that I've been better at explaining expectations to or things that I am wanting to my family, to my friends, to my husband, that help me grow and saying, "Okay, I need this, I expect this from you. I expect you to be a little bit more better of a listener, um, or rather than a problem solver, because I don't need a problem solver right this minute. I just need to get it off my chest with my sibling. It's I want a relationship with you, and so how are we going to make that work together? And how can we have that as not only siblings but as couples, because we're both married, that we can have this cohesive family unit, um, and friends, of just saying, just let's just talk things out. Things aren't going well, so I just want to figure out what that is, or things are going really well. Like, maybe we should try something else. Just those kind of expectations, and setting that and saying, okay, here's what it is. Because what I'm expecting or needing from any of those people in my life may not be the same things that they are expecting from me. And I might not be reaching those expectations for them either, because I don't know what they are. They don't have that. They haven't told me, so I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. You kind of feel like I don't know what I'm doing with my hands, that I don't know how to reach that expectation because I don't know what that expectation is. So we're with with expectations, know that it's a two-way street, right? You have your own expectations that you have for yourself, and you have expectations of others. And the answer to both of those, in a weird way, is to communicate them to yourself and to those that are needing to hear that and needing to know what you're expecting out of that, because there's no, if you can't communicate about it, then you're always going to feel like you're failing or you've let somebody down because you don't know. um those are the feelings that I have felt, and I feel the most when I don't have those conversations and really dig deep into what I am trying to, how I'm trying to work this relationship with somebody. So, for that, we just talked about expectations between yourself and between others. We're going to jump to a commercial break really fast, but come back. We're going to talk about grace and how important it is. You are listening to the Mindset Bloomcast with Mallory McGary. I am your host, Mallory McGary. You can find me at Mallory at beautifullyblooming.com or beautifullyblooming.com, my website. You are listening to the WGSN-DB Going Solo Network, radio, TV, and podcasts, the #1 internet talk network. We'll see you in just a minute. Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Mindset Bloomcast with Mallory. I am your host, Mallory McGary. I am the CEO and founder of Beautifully Blooming. You can find me at beautifullyblooming.com, or you can email me at Mallory at beautifullyblooming.com as well. You are listening to the WGSN-DB Going Solo Network, the #1 internet talk network of radio, TV, and podcasts. So, welcome back. We are jumping right in to our next favorite, my other favorite topic, grace. And it's something that it has taken me a long time to get good at. I'm still a work in progress, as because I am human. It didn't happen overnight, but it is something that I feel has been a really great part of my journey and my story. So we just finished talking about expectations, how we hold ourselves to expectations, how we hold others to expectations, and unless we communicate what those are and um, those bars that we want or what we're wanting out of a relationship or from ourselves, that we're just going to feel like we're failing and feel like we're letting people down. So this is where grace comes in. Again, I'm going back to my notes for real context. I feel that grace and mercy kind of go hand in hand a little bit. Um, that they're interchangeable a little bit. So I'm going to give you the definition of mercy because that is more of my own personal definition for grace. So the definition for mercy is compassionate or an act of kindness. So, how this relates to um, us in this expectation place. So, um, we're going to kind of still go with the story of me trying to have this perfect day with my toddler, that he's learning all these things and we have so much of a structured day that um, I feel like I'm doing, the Pinterest mom thing. um, and if it doesn't happen, I can look at that one of two ways. I can look at that through the lens of expectation and say that I've 100% failed. That if that day was not structured the way that I wanted, or things that I wanted to achieve weren't achieved that day, then I have failed. I have failed him. I have failed as a mom, and it's never going to get any better. So why do I keep trying? Or I can look at it through the lens of grace and mercy and say, today wasn't exactly what I wanted or how I was planning in my mind, and things happen, right? You can have a perfect plan, but life happens in between all that plan. So things have to shift, things have to be movable. You have to have that fluidity in your life. But I can look at it and say, tomorrow we'll try again. And I haven't failed. I just need to try a different tactic, right? That's the two different lenses you can look through, is the lens of expectation that says, you pretty much are a crappy human. Like, you're not a good mom, so why are you even trying? Or through the lens of grace and mercy that says, today didn't go exactly as planned, but you can try again tomorrow. And that's okay. That is okay. Listen to the way that if something happens, the way that you talk to yourself too. What lens are you using most of the time? Are you looking through that lens of expectation where didn't happen on point and plan? That's it. Hands in the air, I'm done. Throw in the towel. It's like it's all over. I'm never gonna make it here. Or are you looking through that lens of grace that says, hey, you may not have made it here to what you were planning on, but maybe you took a different path and got somewhere else, and you learned something new. So you can try again tomorrow on this other path that you were wanting to be on. So keep that in mind of how you're looking at things. I feel like society sometimes has taught us that if you can't, you have to look through everything through that lens of expectation. That if you don't, you failed. And what you need to do is just self punish yourself. Where did we learn that? Anybody that wants to give me a good tips, email me what that is. But I'm curious as to where we've learned that you did make it. So where does the self-talk come in that says you're not going to make it, you're a failure, you're any other fill in the blank down that downward spiral of what that is, that whatever that looks like? Where did we learn that? Because I know when I was 5 that if I couldn't get high enough on the swing, or I couldn't ride my bike without my hands, because that was a huge thing in my neighborhood, to pedal your bike and not use your hands, that if I didn't do it that day, that I just said, "Okay, I'll try again tomorrow." Never crossed my mind that I was failing and I had to give up riding my bike. So, something to kinda, like, think about. Where did we learn that? Think about where you learned that. It's my own homework. I'm gonna think about where I learned that. Um, that we gave ourselves that grace, that we learned, that we looked at it and just said, "I'm gonna try again tomorrow," and that's okay. Give yourself the grace and the time to learn something. Some things are harder to learn, that you're not gonna make it overnight. Other things, you can make them happen overnight. So I'm gonna use my real life as always, but starting a business is not an overnight thing. There are a lot of things that I am DIYing, that I have DIY'd, that I had no clue how to do at all. I never knew how to create a website. I learned it. Did it take me a couple tries? Yes, but I learned it and I did it. but it wasn't overnight. So I was okay. That's grace, just one step at a time, just learning one step at a time, learning to take those baby steps. Other things, writing is more of something that I'm better at. So that came really easy, and that was overnight. So it was, I could kind of fluctuate in between. Okay, I'm learning here and giving myself grace and time, but I know that I can write, so I can push myself a little bit farther in that area. So it kind of fluid, right? That's what we're good at. Life is fluid, and we've got to play that way. So I didn't have an expectation to make a website in a night because I knew I couldn't do it. I still didn't have the expectation that I could write 5 blog posts in a night, because that's a lot of brain power and a lot of different topics to try and delve into. But I had that expectation of that I could do it, and I could learn, and I can get better at it. And I have. So life life lesson, you can get better at things, if you put your heart and soul into it and actually try to learn. Um, but along with that, with grace, looking at, so number one rule with grace is to look through the lens of grace. Give yourself the ability and the time to grow and to learn, and to step into what that is. And if you didn't reach something on your personal deadline, extend it a little bit. It's okay. There are things that take a lot more time than others, and balance that out. Know that something you're probably really good at won't take you as much time as something that you're just barely starting. Allow for that fluidity. Give yourself the grace, right? And emotion, it's not only physically, it's emotionally, it's spiritually, it's mentally, it's all the things. Give yourself that grace and that mercy. Treat yourself kind. Do a kind act for yourself. Be compassionate with yourself in processing things if it's an emotional something, in wrapping your mind around something mentally that maybe may take a bit for you to kind of become okay with. Sit in that grace and know that it's okay to take the time and treat yourself kind. If you treat treat yourself kind, you treat other people kindly and can have an easier time giving them grace, then give yourself the same. Treat yourself the same way. Give yourself that love that you need. But I also think that something important that goes along with grace and mercy is forgiveness. Something that is easier said than done most of the time, if I'm being honest. Um, for me, it's easier to and I'm easier and a faster forgiver of other people. I have a really hard time forgiving myself for not reaching an expectation, maybe um, not being the person that I needed to be right then, or sometimes my mind goes faster than my mouth, or vice versa, and it doesn't happen, and I say things that I'm kind of like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that out loud." But I have a really hard time forgiving myself, and I just replay over and over and over again different scenarios of what could I have done differently? Um, been what could I have said differently? What actions could I have taken that would have led me down a different path to achieve it faster? Uh, Things like that. So, if you're like that, I feel you. I see you. I understand that it's hard to forgive yourself. But I'm going to go my own thing of forgiveness, my own definition of forgiveness, and it, the way I internalize it is being able to just let it go and not worry about it anymore. That's my personal definition of forgiveness, but the dictionary says to cease to feel resentment against or to give up all claim on account of. So, for what it's worth, it's just to give up your claim of whatever happened and just say, acknowledge that it happened and move forward and say, we're just going to revamp the next time. And maybe it's toward a person. Maybe you are a person that holds a grudge a little bit longer. Then maybe somebody else that just forgive for the resentment um, of what that is. So I'm going to preface this a little bit that we're kind of taking a different path on this one because life happens. And I just finished a super good book. It's called The Winter's Garden. And it really hit all the heartstrings, but really brought this process, this forgiveness into my mind. So I'm not giving the real premise of the story. I'm giving my take on it so that it relates to this. But this is the part that I clung to the most, is that the mom in this story has kind of shut herself off from feeling and from creating relationships. She just kind of has become this shell of a person that exists. Um, she she doesn't show love to her kids. She's just kind of shut off all of these things and shut off her emotional feeling and just is kind of just a physical person. Um, and she has a garden, but she doesn't really do a whole lot of it in the summer. At least that's what I've interpreted from the book, from reading the book. But she sits out there in the winter where it's devoid of all color. There's no bloom. Snow's on the ground. It's freezing. And she sits out there on a stone bench. Most of the time, she's just she's lightly, she's not bundled up for it. She's just kind of like wrapped in a blanket, and she sits out there and is just like stewing. Just not stewing is the way that I interpret it, but just contemplating life is what I feel like. Um, and just kind of sitting in that. And that's kind of where I feel like our expectations and our negative self-talk, we just enter into this empty garden full of snow and that's freezing, devoid of any color or anything that brings you joy, and you just sit and just stew and contemplate what um what went wrong, where you're at, anything like that. You're just kind of like in this negative space and there's nothing around you that's uplifting. So it's all negative around you. So throughout the story, she kind of starts to open up and tell her life story and starts to create this bridge this gap of creating this relationship with her daughters. And so she starts to tell her story and her life story and everything that's kind of taken her down this path to where she is right now. And she talks about experiences, about trials, about happy times, about really sad times, really dark times. Um, and they've all led her to the dark times seem to outweigh the happy times. So it all just kind of led her to this void void feelings. And so with when that and it's not until she starts to tell her story and to let those things go out of her life that she starts to find joy again. She starts to find that happiness. She starts to find that she can build this relationship, that nothing is too late. And that what she thought she was doing was for her family was really hurting them in the long run because she wasn't giving what they needed in that in the long way. So by finally starting to share her story, she was finally also starting to be able to forgive herself of the actions she had taken prior in her life to the actions she has taken to that moment in time of her parenting and becoming this shell, and so she started to work her way out of that. So, how this relates to forgiveness a little bit is when I look at sitting in that garden of that devoid of anything that's happy or brings anybody joy, what really are you offering to anybody around you? What are you offering to yourself? How are you viewing your own life just sitting in that space of empty? Is kind of the way I pictured it in my mind, is just kind of empty. There's nothing there that's bringing any sort of anything. You're just there, as opposed to talking about it, sitting in it, acknowledging it, moving forward. Um, where what possibilities can come from that? You can grow in so many ways of having of sharing your story. Sometimes I know feel like my story is not necessarily the best or like the greatest story. It's just my story. It's not some great thing. But as I've shared it and become um more willing and more vulnerable to share parts of my story, that I've had a lot more grace toward myself for the things that I've gone through. Um, place I have a lot more empathy for other people that may be in a similar boat or in a similar type of experience. I have more empathy because I can say, I've kind of felt these feelings. I may not know the exact thing you're going through, but I've felt these feelings, and be able to say, give yourself time. Give yourself the grace. Don't hold on to things that are going to not serve you anymore. The world doesn't have time for that, right? It feels like we don't have time for anything, but you yourself as a person don't have time to hold on to those negative things, because if you hold on to that, if you're holding on to negativity, you're losing out on something positive. Or you and if you're holding on to negativity, you're seeing the positive things, but instead of seeing the positive, you're picking it apart. And rather than finding the silver linings of things, you're finding the rain cloud, is the best way to look at it. That negativity will put that lens on that will say something's going wrong, you're not going to make it, you're going to just fail, so why even try? Anything like that. It just is clouding that judgment. Whereas if you are able to share your story, share those experiences, move forward, give yourself that grace, that compassion, and forgive yourself for whatever it is, you can move forward, and you're finding the silver linings in the rain cloud. You're finding the happiness and the joy in life rather than sitting in the negative. You're taking the negative and turning it into something positive. You're growing from it. You're learning. You didn't fail, like Thomas Edison didn't make a light bulb like 1,000. It took him like 1,000 tries, but he learned. He just he made the light bulb, yes, but he found out 1,000 other ways that how not to make one. It wasn't that he failed. He just found a different way to. He just kept trying and found a different way to actually make it. That's kind of what life is. We're different trials and things that we are going through in our life. It's just maybe that path didn't work out. So, but I still want this goal. We're going to take another path that will lead to that, but it's just a completely different way of trying it. That's that's the greatness of this life, and what I feel like is awesome about it. So, quick recap for today. I'm so glad for all of you guys to be here, but I really want you guys to get out of expectation. Have those conversations if you need them. Have the conversation with yourself. I talk to myself in the mirror a lot about things that I'm wanting, things I'm needing, what I'm expecting, and why I'm expecting that to be a thing, that bar I set. Um, Talk it out. Let people know what is there. That way the feelings of that you've disappointed somebody, let somebody down, or that you've disappointed yourself dwindle away. Break break that right now. Let's just break that habit right now. And on the flip side of that, as you're going through that breaking that habit, because it is a hard habit to break. I Some more than others, but it is a tough habit to break. But give yourself the grace. Treat yourself as somebody you love, somebody that you are happy to have in your life. That give yourself the compassion to move forward, to see things through as a learning experience, not a failure, that you're growing, that you are a person. Get out of that dark and devoid garden of things that just kind of suck joy out of your life, and jump into the space that is exactly who you are. You are authentic to yourself. That do the things that bring joy to your life, to your heart. Fill up your own cup, because you can't pour from an empty cup. You need to fill up yours too and get yours full. So I am so happy to have you guys here. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. You are listening to the Mindset Bloomcast with Mallory. I am your host, Mallory McGary. I am the founder and CEO of Beautifully Blooming. You can find me at beautifullyblooming.com or email me at mallory@beautifullyblooming.com. Please send in suggestions, takeaways from episodes, things you want to learn. I'm here to help break through all mindset and make things happen the best way I can for you. You are listening to the WGSN-DB Going Solo Network, the #1 internet talk network that has radio, TV, and podcasts. I'm so happy to have you guys here for this session. See you guys later. Have a good rest of your week.